Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 164 based on novel. So let's start. Tan Wan had already been in Holy City for some time. For the sake of making some contribution during this temple's great gathering, she recently made all-out efforts. The competition being on the verge of starting on the next day, Li Xingji urged her strongly to take a stroll and relax her senses. This is why she went out from the Alliance's general headquarters. Just before, she accidentally caught sight of this white-clad young man standing in front of the announcement paper. With her sharp sense for magic fluctuations, she immediately discerned the extraordinary facet of this man. She had a very special feeling. Standing here, he looked human, but in her senses, this man was like a mass of light, a mass of very soft light, seemingly giving off no feelings of substance. That soft light gave off a great feeling of gentleness. Feeling very cozy, her tense feelings on the verge of the competition were greatly relaxed when looking at this young man's back. This was clearly not an ordinary person. The young man's special qualities greatly attracted Tan Wan's attention, and she just came up to probe him for a bit. Without a doubt, this was certainly a light user powerhouse. From his simple clothes, that should not be a mage. So could it be a priest? A warrior, assassin, or knight would surely not be releasing such soft elemental fluctuations. But what followed next shocked her greatly. The wind essence she released was not brutal at all, her goal being only to interrupt this white-clad young man's surges of serenity. Just by pushing him back just a bit, that peaceful feeling should be interrupted at once. But to Tan Wan's shock, when her wind essence came in contact with that white-clad young man's back, it dispersed without a sound, turning into a breeze that revolved all around him and rose up to fade away. That person clearly didn't do anything, so why did my wind essence obey his breath? His breath was all he had released, without the slightest transfer of spiritual energy. Tan Wan was full of incomprehension, but even so, she only felt mystery from this man. Unconsciously, Tan Wan strode forward and closed the gap with him, patting that white-clad young man's back. She had after all no evil intention, and didn't have any wind essence in her hand, but some spiritual energy was gathered in her palm. At her level of cultivation, she was able to release powerful magic without even any chant or incantation. But this time, that young man moved back. In a light flash, he shifted a meter away, causing Tan Wan's palm to land in emptiness as he turned back. Long time no see, Tan Wan. This tall man's face came to Tan Wan's sight just as he turned back. Then her body shook intensely, as her gaze became instantly glued to him. An exaggeratedly handsome face with golden hair draped behind his head, and a pair of golden eyes devoid of the slightest impurity. The warm smile on his face felt so pure, just like the aura dispersed from him. Right, they had not met for close to 5 years, during which he became even taller, and even more steady and mature. He had gained a quite stalwart look to replace the unripe features from 5 years ago. If Tan Wan were to describe his imposing manner, the only word to come to her mind would be perfect. It's him. But how could it be? Wasn't he missing since long before? This handsome face was just too deeply engraved in Tan Wan's memories. Wasn't it right for the sake of surpassing him one day that she had been cultivating so hard during the past 4 years? Seeing this missing boy reappear for real in front of her, Tan Wan felt her heartbeat visibly accelerate. This man felt like light itself, an existence of incredible level in her mind. Salute Temple Headley on my behalf. The white-clad young man nodded to Tan Wan, before leaving in an unhurried walk. Tan Wan just stood there, suddenly raising her head only after looking blank for several seconds, but that white figure had already disappeared completely from sight. Is that him? Is that really him? I'm not dreaming? Tan Wan muttered irresolutely. She had formerly imagined many times the scene of their next encounter. Wasn't it for the very objective of catching up to him she had been cultivating so assiduously? But seeing him again, she realized with a start that the gap between the two of them had only gotten even larger. Why is it that when I look at him, I have that same feeling of mystery as when I look at teacher? Only, teacher's feeling of depths is even more straightforward, while his feels just distant. If he has really come back, then how about teacher's plans? Thinking so far, Tan Wan suddenly had a change of look, and ran in the opposite direction with almost no hesitation. A breeze was attached to her body, turning him into a green ray disappearing toward horizon. Morning. Dawn rose gradually, and an expanse of white towered over the deep blue sky. Holy City was already in a bustling state. All around the Alliance's great stadium was an impenetrable crowd, aside from the few specialized entrances. But all around this stadium were 10 projecting screens, broadcasting the stage of the temple's great gathering. The magical crystal projector was invented long ago, but was used very rarely, because its consumption was really massive. A magical crystal of the 7th step would last for only half an hour before being out of energy. The magical crystals of the 9th step would make it last longer, but inserting one in a magic projector would cause unredeemable damage to it. So in other words, maintaining the broadcast had cost 10 magic crystals. And the hunt of magical beasts of the 9th step was nothing so easy. That was an astronomical fortune. These masses which had surrounded the Alliance's great stadium were aiming at getting closer to the magic screens, to see as clearly as possible this marvelous once-in-10 years event. For the sake of preserving the order in Holy City, the streams of people were separated, and close to 20,000 practitioners were mobilized by the 6 great temples to put order. But without a doubt, this being the location of the real event, almost everyone wished to watch from this area. There was quite some time before the first day of the competition, but this area was already bustling since long ago. Some people even held various gambling events in private, some betting for the ordering of points accumulation amongst the 6 great temples, some betting for the number 1 in this round, and some betting for the final champion. The Alliance could only turn a blind eye in this situation. After all, this was something they had no way to supervise perfectly. However, the Alliance would never set up their own gambling stalls. After all, the contest involved the 6 great temples. Doing that would surely cause them to be accused of controlling the results. Today's weather was good, with thin clouds hovering over the sky, mostly covered in dark blue. As the sun rose, a cleansing feeling spread to the people. The rising sun illuminated the whole earth. Half an hour later, the 6 entrances of the stadium opened, and spectators started entering under a strict inspection. The spectators able to enter inside the Alliance's great stadium had to either spend a lot of money, or had made enormous contribution for the Alliance. 2 girlish figures rapidly attracted all the surrounding attention because they were just too beautiful. The girl clad in a red gown had a fiery temper and enchanting looks, but very clear eyes. By her side was another girl wearing a white skirt, whose delicate purity made her appear just like a superior being. What, Yi Wei Yang and Feng Linger? Someone recognized them. Right, these 2 absolute beauties were the current leaders of the Alliance's great auction house, beautiful and possessing an enormous wealth and authority. But the most important point to a lot of male figures was that they were both unmarried. Immediately, the calls of their names resonated all around like great tides. Yi Wei Yang had a smiling expression, waving at the surrounding masses without pause. But Feng Linger was a lot calmer, only advancing calmly. The 2 girls' differences in temperaments gave them even greater popularity amongst the people, but, what a shame, these girls had powerhouses from the 6 great temples on guard at their side. Breaking past them was totally impossible. When the 2 girls' figures disappeared in the entrance of the stadium, the excited calls gradually calmed down. Spectators only had half an hour to enter the venue. Being late was unacceptable as the 6 entrances were reclosed very fast. The guards then became a lot stricter, because they knew that the real contestants were about to arrive. Right at this time, an odd group had appeared at the entrance of the temple's great gathering. Totaling 10, they were all clad in large cloaks and had even their faces concealed, as they directly made their way inside the night stadium. The person in charge of guarding the entrance was a knight of the 8th step clad in mithril foundation armor. Seeing the group come over, he couldn't help but wrinkle his brows. What were the ones guarding the entrances doing? It was already past the right time, yet they were actually allowed to enter. With a wave of his hand, he intercepted these people, but very rapidly understood why they were allowed to pass. A brilliant insignia appeared right in front of his eyes. The mithril foundation knight beat his chest with his right fist, resonantly performing a standard knight salute, and actually making an exception by opening the door to let them enter. A lot of people saw this scene, but they didn't think about it too much. In their eyes, they were clearly some people from the Night Temple. After this small episode, a truly stirring event took place. 6 teams appeared from 6 different passages. These were 36 knights, 36 mags, 36 assassins, 36 warriors, 36 summoners, and 36 priests, all of whom entered simultaneously from all entrances of the stadium. They were all clad in equipment symbolizing their own temples. The highest target of attention was from the Night Temple. The one leading them had a tall build, his azure armor dispersing incomparable auras of mightiness. That was the armor transformed from the divine throne of order and law. Behind him was a row of golden foundation armored knights, whose golden bright and dazzling sight dazzled the people's eyes. The contestants from the Night Temple had come, Divine Knight Long Chenying and the 35 golden foundation knights under his lead. These were the true greatest forces of the Night Temple. The golden foundation knights at the front even dispersed orange glints of the epic tier. For a moment, the people's cheers rose to a peak. How many times in their lives would they be able to see so many divine tools and equipment of epic and legendary tier? How could they not be excited? Cheers could be heard on every corner of Holy City. Powerhouses of the 6 great temples were entering the Alliance's great stadium, and the temple's great gathering was finally about to start. Inside the Alliance's great stadium, this was totally different from the Demon Hunt competition. At the time of the latter, the inside of the stadium was divided into 3 areas, each of which was assigned to a temple. But these divided areas were now totally united as one, the huge stadium's inside linked into a single one immense field. Everyone that entered was surely a shocking figure. In the 6 directions were 6 honored guest lounges. They were elevated highly, and could all look down on the stage from a height. Don't think that this is just an area for spectators. The guests in here were either powerhouses or great figures in the Alliance's balance of power. And they were shouldering an important mission, to establish a defensive barrier covering the whole Alliance's great stadium through a magic array on the guests' lounge. Contestants in the temple's great gathering were all powerhouses of the 8th step. What terrifying level would the spiritual energy fluctuations produced during their clashes reach? Without a sufficiently powerful defensive barrier, this stadium would already be wrecked in just a few matches. Except from the ones in the honored guests' lounge, the rest was only contestants in their resting areas. After the 36 people in each temple entered, they returned to their own area to wait for the formal start of the temple's great gathering. The 6 great temples' contestants have all entered the stadium. Director referee, please give your instructions. A vigorous and energetic voice resounded through the stage on the side of the Night Temple. Immediately, a vigorous voice sounded out, close the doors. Until the contests terminate, no one will be allowed to go through. Yes. Along with these sonorous sounds of collisions, the 6 gates closed slowly, guarded by powerhouses of the 8th step from each temple. A voice full of August spread out, I am Chen Zidian, referee for this year's temple's great gathering. This year, 54 demon hunters will be acting as referees, ensuring fairness and equitability. The rules have been announced long ago, so I don't have much more to say. Let the lots drawing ceremony start for the first stage, the individual competition. Chen Zidian, human legend and captain of the Demon God Slayer's Demon Hunt Squad. When the name of Chen Zidian was heard in the Alliance's great stadium, all contestants from the 6 great temples stood up and made their salutations towards the Night Temple's guest lounge. The Demon Hunt Squad Demon God Slayers was the true pinnacle of human demon hunt squads. Chen Zidian was their captain, who had led his demon god slayers all over the continent and greatly impeded the demon god emperor with the sheer strength of their demon hunt squad. Their contribution to the alliance was already beyond measure with contribution points. For these human legends to appear there as referees of this gathering was something absolutely no one dared raise complaints about. In fact, even now, the other members of the demon god slayers were still in demon territory, hidden beneath the surface of Modu to keep watch over the demon god emperor's activities. On the side of the mage temple, Li Jingxi had a very sinister look. He naturally wouldn't have dared raise any complaints toward Chen Zidian, not on the basis of strength, but on the basis of sheer respect. Chen Zidian was possibly the elder with highest seniority in the whole temple alliance, so no one could raise a complaint at his holding the governmental office, and furthermore, he would surely raise a fair and just judgment. What caused Li Jingxi's complexion to look unsightly was that, yesterday, he heard from Tan Wan a name that should not affect him, but was really affecting his feelings. He was back. For years ago he was already at the 8th step. So, could he already be a 4th divine knight for the Night Temple? If this was for real, that would add a terrible variable to this temple's great gathering. After all, at his age, he really had the best chance to rally supporters. The aged ones of the Night Temple would surely be glowing with vitality because of his coming back. Right now, the 6 great temples contestants were all seated in their respective seats, about to draw lots for selecting their opponent. The non-participation of the priest temple made the other 180 powerhouses from the other 5 temples the only ones needing to participate in the drawing and contests. In a bit, the contestants would come to light, and undergo a selection. Every chosen 2 would immediately have their match under the powerful Demon Hunter's watch. Demon Hunters could be called part of an independent system. Their great strength and enormous contributions to the alliance made them the best possible referees. Such a pick would guarantee fairness. No one should ever play tricks in such a place. Before the contest starts, I have a matter to announce. Chen Zidian's voice resounded once again. Hearing him, the overwhelming majority of the higher-ups of the alliance were in states of shock, including the participating ones, because they didn't hear about such an announcement beforehand at all. Chen Zidian declared, based on the ruling of the temple's great gathering, any titled Demon Hunt squad should be qualified to participate in the gathering under their squad name, and have their total points counted as well. I have received the application of a titled Demon Hunt squad. They will be participating in this gathering. Based on the rules, I have given my acceptance to that. In a bit, they will be coming for the drawing of lots. This revelation raised a great commotion amongst the higher-ups formed the 6 great temples. A demon hunt squad wanting to participate in the gathering? None of them had ever seen such a situation happen in their lives. Over the past 1,000 years, it had happened only twice or thrice at most. A demon hunt squad participating there would at most be here for the sake of training. After all, even if a titled demon hunt squad had some privileges, they were in the end limited in their numbers. How could there be a demon hunt squad wanting to participate in this temple's great gathering? Were they only here to polish their training? And in the Temple Alliance, the titled demon hunt squads were only just a few. So just which one was taking part? Chen Zidian continued, for the sake of reaching the minimum team count formally acceptable, this demon hunt squad was specially allowed to welcome other demon hunters, reaching the total count of 10, and none of their member exceed 100 years of age, as per the rules. This demon hunt squad's name is Bright Glimmer of Hope. A bright glow landed upon the Knight Temple's lounge, shining in the area right between the Knights and Assassins' resting areas. At some point, 10 people had calmly appeared, all clad in large white gowns and wearing helmets. Only when this golden illumination shone upon them did the contestants and spectators take notice of them. Outside from the Alliance's great stadium, the people around the entrance of the Knight Stadium realized immediately that these 10 were actually those ones they saw arrive after the rest. They were actually demon hunters, and not people from the Knight Temple. Right, they were back after going through 4 years of secluded training. Bright Glimmer of Hope was back and standing there, about to take part in this temple's great gathering. Bright Glimmer of Hope. This name was obscure to the overwhelming majority of the crowd. To say nothing about the masses, even among the higher-ups of the 6 great temples, the ones aware of this name were just a few. Hearing Chen Zidian's announcement, the most shocked was the head of the Mage Temple, Li Xingxi. Never did he expect Long Haochen to actually choose not to participate the temple's great gathering on the side of the Knight Temple, but under his Demon Hunt squad's name. Just what was he planning? Could it be that he really believed their nameless titled Demon Hunt squad to be able to contend with the temples? Chen Zidian continued, I swear on my honor as a demon hunter that Bright Glimmer of Hope's participation won't give rise to any discrimination. May the ballot drawing start. 2 white glows abruptly appeared on top of the dome, and in the meantime, a multicolored light slowly shone upon the surroundings of the stadium, spreading a defensive barrier. This barrier was constructed through the work of a lot of powerhouses, and was able to even withstand divine tools or domains bombardment without getting destroyed. The main controller of the whole defensive barrier was Chen Zidian himself. 2 white rays flickered intensely, and the next moment, they suddenly stopped, and in 2 directions, each shone on a person. How coincidental, these 2 rays shone upon the Knight Temple and Mage Temple's areas. 2 figures immediately came out and got inside the great stadium. The first battle of the temple's great gathering would start, and the judges were all on the lounges. They only focused on maintaining the barrier and had no specialist about to enter the stadium. How could the powerhouses able to participate in the temple's great gathering not be able to determine a winner by themselves? If the 2 parties really were extremely close in strength, Chen Zidian would be the one to personally determine a winner and a loser. Since there were a whole 190 contestants, they naturally wouldn't waste time, and the instant the contestants entered the field, the competition would start. Requiring at least the 8th step of cultivation, practitioners of weaker cultivation were already sorted out. So apart from the priest temple, none of the other 5 great temples would get any extra restriction or help. After entering the temple's great stadium, all participating knights had long since put away their armors, and were entering the field with only their bare fists. A small door would open itself for every selected candidate. As the first knight entered the stage, his back glinted with golden hexagram patterns, carrying a mighty roar as a glistening savage tiger came out. The figure of the knight flashed, placing himself on the tiger's back, and swiftly charged at the distant mage. That savage tiger had a pair of wings on its back, extending out over 5 meters, and had a bulky build. Opening its mouth agape, it launched a series of explosive projectiles at the mage. A holy saint tiger, magical beast of the 9th rank. Knights qualified to wear a golden foundation armor were all, without exception, excellent figures in the Knight Temple. One of their great trumps was the strength of every such competitor. In the first match, the Knight Temple was already showing great prospects. Their first knight on stage reached the peak of the 8th step in cultivation, at just 1 step from the 9th step. His opponent was a fire mage. Because no equipment could be used in the competition, the latter did not even have a magic staff. His right arm swiftly drew complex symbols in the emptiness, and with massive roars, a flame bear came out from there, shooting its paws to destroy the light projectiles, and rapidly strode towards the knight. This was not a summoner summoning magic, because the resulting magical beast was an elemental beast condensed to fire. Elemental beast summon was a special capability usable in the 8th step. Capable of great bursts of power, the only shortcoming being the relatively high cost of spiritual energy. Sheltered from danger by the fire bear, that fire mage rapidly completed a chant. Even without support from equipment, that was a mage reaching the peak of the 8th step, able to launch powerful magic on the premise of spending enough time chanting. The mage made his move, standing on the side of the fire bear and holy saint tiger. That knight made an outstanding following move, not letting himself get entangled with the fire bear. He bowed toward the holy saint tiger's back, shooting forward the next instant. The golden spiritual wings on his back lit up, and in his right hand, a flashy holy sword took shape. Diving face down, it aimed straight at the mage, as the flame bear confronted the holy saint tiger. At the same level, a mage's offensive power was undoubtedly the greatest. So the first thing needed to defeat a mage would be to seal his magic, and to avoid by any means letting an all-out magic assault be carried out. Otherwise, one would hardly avoid getting defeated by the torrential magic attacks. The choice of the Saint Knight of the 8th step was undoubtedly the best, but the magic tutor of the 8th step was at no disadvantage either. A mighty holy sword came out, as his body suddenly turned illusory. At a lift of his right hand, pointed to the sky, the Knight of the 8th step met a flame-colored glint. Vulcan's finger? And in a situation with no boosting equipment at disposal. For him to unexpectedly launch such a powerful spell of the 8th step so rapidly was a shocking token of strength. The knight held a holy sword in both his hands, shining in a pure holy light, and giving him a sacred holy feel. He did not avoid, nor did he shrink down, but faced Vulcan's finger head-on. That's because this knight knew very well that should he retreat in defense, the following course of action would lock him into a passive position. At that point, making a comeback would be close to impossible. Gold and red intertwined in the air, the holy knight being completely shrouded in flaming light. No one could deny that the knight and mage had a gap in the offensive field. The former let out a groan, some traces of scorch remaining on his body. But although the knight suffered a loss in this clash, his goal was reached. Vulcan's finger was not enough to keep him away, and in a flash of golden light his speed went straight up, reaching the front of the mage in a split instant. That was the knight ability of the 8th step, lightning flash, as well as one of the most effective techniques against a mage. When used from such a distance, a mage would hardly block the incoming offense. Trial! The knight shouted out, a thunderous bellow shaking the whole stage. A pure white glow came out from nowhere, landing right onto the opposite mage. A brilliance surrounded the opposite mage, taking the shape of a crystal sculpture-like red barrier. Approached by the knight, this situation was visibly nothing a mage would wish to face. The magic tutor's right hand was stretched in front of his chest, executing a defensive spell resisting the might of light of trial. Then his right hand pushed forward, condensing a ball that came striking the holy knight. After reaching the 8th step of cultivation, a mage wouldn't be so weak in close quarters range anymore because they had a lot of defensive measures and even instant magic at their disposal. In a prepared face-off, they did not stand no chance at all. But how could the holy knight let him draw back after having finally drawn close, right in front of him? Stamping the ground with his right feet, he suddenly divided the holy sword in his hand in two. His body forcibly made way into those flames. A warped radiance lit up, dispersing the intense flames to all directions instantly. Elemental obliterating halo. Under consecutive attacks, this Holy Knight still managed to consecutively deploy Light of Trial and Elemental obliterating halo. That was a real knight. Even without having reached the 9th step, how could he have so swiftly unleashed such powerful techniques? Right at this time, a victor seemed to have come out of the clash between the Fire Bear and Holy Sacred Tiger. The Fire Bear being a type of summon in the end, although it held an advantage at the beginning, as its summoner was assailed under the frantic offense of the Holy Knight, he couldn't receive any command, and was in the end crushed by the Holy Saint Tiger. The battle reached a white-hot state at this instant. The instant the Holy Knight fractured the flame cage, this match was already left without suspense. A blade storm abruptly shot forth, released by the two waved swords, and a huge golden projectile carrying a sword intent of incomparable might clashed against the defenses of the magic tutor, directly sending him flying. In the process of flying out, Light of Trial finally matched with Blade Storm to break past his defense. The battle is over. It's the knight's win. Return to your respective seats. Chen Zidian's August-filled voice reverberated. The mage did not sustain any wound, but had an awkward look. He indeed had just lost, because Blade Storm's true might didn't reside in its burst power, but in its absorption power and prolonged attacks. If this Retribution Knight hadn't been lenient, his life would have ended under Blade Storm's effect. A bright light had started shining upon the knight's shoulder at some point. The Holy Knight knocked his right fist on his chest and performed a knight salute toward the mage, before returning to his own seat. The Saint Magic Tutor, having seen the shine on his shoulder, immediately came to the realization that his loss was no grievance at all. This guy actually had a light fairy. Seeing that fairy's volume, it should have evolved once. No wonder he could keep using knight abilities in such short succession. The first battle came to a closure, but the tournament did not stop at that at all. The previous two lights of selection returned in mid-air, and light flickered swiftly to choose the contestant for the second battle. Time pressed, so there was no affordable delay. The tournament naturally had to follow its course. The two opponents in this battle could see that the seat of the Saint Magic Tutor had darkened a bit, showing his elimination from the knockout battles, while the Holy Knight had a bright shine appear above his head to indicate his victory in the first battle. The Alliance's great stadium was really miraculous. These fantastic scenes features were brought by many years of research by the Temple Alliance. The rest went even more intensely. Powerhouses from the 5 temples involved were illuminated in succession, and 7 battles went in the blink of an eye. Of the 5 great temples, the Knight Temple was the best-ranked one yet, having had 3 people selected, all of whom had achieved victory. The Warrior Temple had the most participation yet, 5 matches, but 4 of them ended up in losses, making them a stepping stone for the other temples as of now. But this was just the beginning. As the individual battles involved 190 people, the first stage would need to have 95 matches going, and they were not at a 10th yet. The rest of the battles would only go even more intensely. The Light of Selection would try as far as possible to separate the 5 great temples so to avoid forcing them into mutual destruction. The same would go for the individual competition, unless members of a certain temple would already be the large majority of the constituents in a certain stage. Matches between members of the same temple won't easily occur. The 8th round selection lights flickered, rapidly illuminating the Assassin Temple's camp, as well as accurately landing upon the camp of Bright Glimmer of Hope, picking the 3rd one from the left among them. Because those from Bright Glimmer of Hope's side didn't have a reserved entrance, they had to pass through the gate of the Knight Temple to enter the stadium. The Assassin Temple's area was very close to the Knight Temple. Right upon entering the stage, the chosen assassin immediately entered the state of invisibility. In the 7 battles that had already gone on, the Knight Temple had achieved 3 victories, and the other 4 temples had achieved 1 victory each. Only, the Warrior Temple was in disadvantage due to having already had 5 people picked. This was the second contestant from the Assassin Temple, the previous one having achieved victory. This assassin powerhouse was really brimming with confidence. Before entering the stadium, that demon hunter from Bright Glimmer of Hope had to remove his gown, exposing his inner clothing, as well as proving he had no other piece of equipment. Seeing his looks, the masses from outside as well as the ones on stage all couldn't help but cry out in alarm, because this demon hunter from Bright Glimmer of Hope was really too young. This knight looked in his 30s, with bright eyes, and a handsome, resolute face. Over half of the Golden Foundation knights from the Knight Temple recognized him. Seeing him appear, someone couldn't help but breathe out in low voice, "Wen Jiao, that's Wen Jiao. Wasn't he supposed to be missing for very long?" So he actually became part of the demon hunt squad named Bright Glimmer of Hope. Right, the first one to take up weapons on Bright Glimmer of Hope's side was young Wen Jiao. Compared to 4 years ago, he became far more steady. He originally had a steady, though arrogant to the bone, character. But right now, he appeared like a piece of jade, peaceful and gentle. Having none of his previous sharpness left, his steady atmosphere actually caused the Golden Foundation armored knights to exclaim in admiration. Straddling forward, young Wen Jiao entered the stadium, and a miraculous scene followed, releasing a golden halation under his feet and outwards. Holy Mantle? Almost all knights recognized this ability. But Holy Mantle was really low ranked amongst knight abilities. Did he actually really use it in the temple's great gathering? Being only 30 years old this year, young Wen Jiao's participation in the great gathering was greatly shocking, but using this ability right after coming up gave chills to the people from the Knight Temple. Although he was not standing for the Knight Temple right now, no one could deny that young Wen Jiao was Yang Haohan's grandson. Because Yang Haohan already shouldered the burden of being the Alliance's head, he was unable to participate in this gathering, so in some sense, young Wen Jiao was standing for his grandfather in the powerful knight's eyes. No matter with which status he would participate, the higher-ups from the Knight Temple were naturally unwilling to see him lose. When young Wen Jiao's holy mantle was released, they very rapidly realized that it wasn't that simple, because it was really released on an exaggeratedly massive scale. With young Wen Jiao's body as center, Holy Mantle's bright shine spread outwards rapidly, and reached a diameter of 30 meters in the blink of an eye. In the meantime, young Wen Jiao waved his hands on the two sides of his body, which radiated with 2 rays of light, and released 2 holy swords. These holy swords dispersed metallic glosses filled with the power of Spiritual Highland. But, Spiritual Highland, at the 8th step. And to condense Spiritual Highland into a blade would require one to reach the peak of the 8th step. And seeing young Wen Jiao's relaxed look, his consumption seemed very little. A spotlessly white holy sword dispersed a thin golden color, as young Wen Jiao's whole body went into a bizarre state. His right feet straddled forward, causing his body to float in midair, and a pair of wide golden spiritual wings spread out from his back. His eyes then lit up in red, slowly sweeping through the stadium. This video will end here.